Howdy, Immortalium here, and welcome to another MVM review, this time reviewing the show Arcana Famiglia. It has a longer name than that, but most people just call it Arcana Famiglia for short. So anyway, Arcana Famiglia. Just before I start talking about the actual show itself, there is something I need to point out, and that is that this is an adaptation of an otome game. Now, if you're not familiar with otome games are basically reverse harem. It's a dating simulator, essentially, or at least a visual novel, where you take on the role of a girl, and, there's a whole bunch of attractive guys, and possibly sometimes attractive girls, and you must get romantically linked with one. Like, I have seen a couple of adaptations of otome games recently. When I say seen, I'm aware of them. Like, I know one of the more popular ones right now is Hakuoki, but I haven't seen any of that. And I really intend to, since I've heard it's kind of mediocre, but anyway. So, I just need to point out about Arcana Famiglia. Now, Arcana Famiglia, what is the plot of Arcana Famiglia? It appears to be set in Italy. Not exactly sure when the time period is. And we're introduced to this mafia-style family. Which basically all of the members are linked to these kind of tarot cards, at least Italian version tarot cards, and these tarot cards give them abilities, arcana, as the show calls it. And we are introduced to this man called Papa, who is the Don of the family. And Papa declares that in 2 months' time that there will be an Arcana Duello. Now, an Arcana Duello is basically where all the mafia members will end up fighting each other using their Arcana powers, and whoever wins will get the opportunity to fight Papa, and if they manage to defeat Papa, they will be able to become the new Don. So that's how the story begins, and the interesting thing to point out is, despite the fact that this Arcana Duello is introduced with such gusto, really, it only really becomes relevant for the last episode, episode 12. The rest of the show is generally, I wouldn't go so far as to say filler, but in general, it's just kind of all the characters goofing off. Them going to try to find the owner of a lost cat, creating some new pies, telling spooky stories at a kids' fair, etc., etc. We do get some backgrounds of some characters, some background stories. In general, it kind of surprised me how irrelevant the Arcana Duello became almost immediately. So, yeah, that was very surprising. Not only that, but I want to point out, the writing in this show is not that great. That's the best way to put it. Basically breaks the first rule, I should say, of writing, and that is that it tells rather than shows. So the very first episode, we get these very long introduction with all the characters, which explains what their powers are, etc., etc. The very next episode, the lead character moves into a new house, and all of the characters reintroduce themselves to her, despite the fact that she already knows, who they are, and they all know who they are. The only reason for reintroducing them is that so we can know them. So, it's just very lazy writing, and quite sloppy, to be frank. So, yeah, I found that quite problematic from a story perspective. And even the ending, I will just say, the ending of the show is, well, it was already quite anticlimactic to begin with, the whole premise, but let's just say it took a very anticlimactic turn right at the last, couple of minutes. So yeah, overall story, certainly not good at all. That's my personal opinion. Characters. As with, most dating sims or visual novels, one of the most important things is the characters, and there are a variety of people in this show. Our lead character is a girl called Felicita, and Felicita is the daughter of Papa and Mama, who are the leaders of the family, and she has the Lover's Arcana, which allows her to be able to see into the hearts of other people around her. And let's just say, she's a very bland and uninteresting character, let's just put that. I have heard that criticism applied to a lot of visual novels, but and their adaptations, but this one really takes the cake. She has pretty much no personality whatsoever. You know, she does have that personality in that she hits people sometimes if they're a bit sexual or something like that, particularly the guys. But beyond that, she just kind of, I would use the term reactive rather than proactive. There is a bit near the end where she does become a bit proactive. But even then, it's, you know, it's something that, you know, we've seen millions of times before and doesn't really add anything at all to her character. So, overall, her character is very uninteresting. That's the best way to put it. Now we're introduced to the rest of the crew, all of which are handsome guys. All of them have their quirks. You know, there's a handsome guy who loves to eat. There's a handsome guy with an eye patch. There's a handsome guy who's stoic and emotionless. There's a handsome guy who's energetic and, you know, full of energy. And they're all about as cliched as you get. Yeah, that I found very, very unfortunate. Not only that, but the only two of them that get any proper character development are Liberta and Nova. And even then, their pasts are uninteresting and, you know, I didn't really care for them at all. Not only that, but Liberta and Nova seem to have this weird relationship with each other. When I say weird, I've seen it millions of times in other shows, and I don't get why it's, you know, so prevalent, actually. It's that the lead two characters, like lead two males in particular, must butt heads with each other. And there's not really any reason here for them to be butting heads with each other so sharply, besides the fact that they are the two main male characters. So, yeah, characters, not that good either. And there wasn't really any standouts at all. At least none that I actually liked. Yeah, I'm just gonna say, yeah, that basically handsome guys who are all one-dimensional and flat, lead character uninteresting, that's the best way to put it. Now, so far I've been extremely negative about this show. Now getting to the animation, here is actually where it kind of gets better. This is animation by J.C.Staff, who are well known for animating several seasons of Slayers, Toradora, I think they did Golden Time, and they deliver a pretty good job in this show. It's pretty nice looking. Now, when I say pretty nice looking, the character designs are very bland and uninteresting, but I would apply that more to the fault of the company that made the video game and not necessarily to the anime studio. But even then, they're not horrible character designs, just very unoriginal. But animation-wise, you know, in general, it's very clean, decently fluid. There's some decent CGI effects, and there isn't really that much quality control issues at all. So overall, it's a pretty well-animated piece, and certainly not a bad show to look at. Music-wise, the opening and ending, the actual tunes are okay, but the voices singing them are grating and irritating. That's the best way to put it. There's a particular section in the opening where, like, I'd almost plug my ears every time just because the lead singer breaks their voice basically. It seems to crack. So, yeah, I didn't like the opening or ending music. Well, the show's actual music itself is very bland and forgettable. Now, I watched this in the English dub, and the English dub is actually decent enough. The lead character is voiced by Lucy Christian, and she delivers, you know, a decent performance given the material. We get a variety of other voice actors and actresses who are quite common to Sentai Filmwork dubs, and all of them deliver decent enough performances. You know, there are none that are overly brilliant, but, you know, they all deliver, you know, pretty acceptable performances, that's the best way to put it. However, there is one thing I best point out, and that is if you watch this in the Japanese, there is a bit of a significant difference between the English dub and the Japanese. And that is Nova, the stoic, kind of emotionless male character that I mentioned before. In the Japanese, he has a fairly deep, you know, male voice. Oddly enough, in the English, he's voiced by a voice actress. He's given kind of a female voice, basically. So, a bit odd, and it might throw some people off. But, you know, the performance from her is decent enough. if you're used to a male voice coming out of the mouth of that character, you're not going to like the female voice. That's the best way to put it. In the MVM release, the only extra really beyond the whole, you know, textless opening and endings and trailers for some other shows is the OVA. And the OVA, like most OVAs, is filler. Although, given that the majority of the show feels like filler, you know, that isn't too, you know, far from the mark or whatever. Anyway, point is, the OVA is actually not as painful, that's the best way to put it, in comparison to the rest of the show. It is still fairly bad, I will say. But it is actually better than the rest of the show, in my opinion. I thought it was better, that's the best way to put it. And then I don't really want to give anything about the plot of the OVA, but suffice to say, if you want the OVA, it is included in MVM's release of this series, so you're not missing anything. And yeah, so overall, Arcana Famiglia, I didn't like it. That's the best way to put it. I didn't enjoy it. I thought the characters were uninteresting. I thought the storytelling was very haphazard, poorly written. You know, the fact that they introduced this Arcana duello, you know, with such, you know, strength at the beginning, and for it to disappear pretty much until the very last episode. It just, yeah, lazy writing. Characters bland. The animation's decent enough. You know, if you're looking for a decent looking J.C.Staff show, you know, this will probably fill the mark. Not keen on the music at all. And, yeah, decent English voice dub. Although, as I said, Nova. And, yeah, now if you're somehow still interested in this show, you know, even after watching this review, maybe you watch this review and you were like, okay, Immortalium doesn't like it, but maybe I will still like it. I will include in the description below some links to some stores, some online stores where you can order Arcana Famiglia. And yeah, you'll be able to support MVM and this show. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.